In the year of 1978, two young filmmakers set out to make a horror film. With very little budget, they managed to create something special, a classic. The title Halloween didn't come until later. It was to be called The Babysitter Murders. Yet they realized, up until that time, no other film has considered the title Halloween. And so they later changed the title, which not only made it more simplistic, but it also grabs the audience's attention. Because, what horror fan doesn't like Halloween? The director not only working on the score himself, but also working alongside Deborah Hill, the co-writer. Together they would work on these storyboards about all these little scares, she called it. The story focuses on a 6-year-old child who unexpectedly murders his 17-year-old sister on a cold October Halloween night in 1963. 15 years in a mental institution, he later breaks out. He then leaves deaths along the town of Haddonfield, haunting the main characters, Laurie Strode, forever. Both Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence give an authentic feel. The directing and camera work helped secure the film's future, with fans of all ages from past to present. The film Halloween is now and forever a beloved masterpiece of the horror genre. Halloween 2, More of the Night He Came Home. A sequel that John Carpenter felt wasn't necessary. He felt the story in 1978 was already told. However, the company and audiences wanted more, which would later haunt the director's life as well. This time we get director Rick Rosenthal. The story cleverly follows the night that ended in 1978. Picking up where the first one left off, Laurie Strode is now sent to a hospital, with Michael close behind her, stalking the halls. It's known to be one of the best sequels in the horror genre. What do you think? 1982's Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, was meant to be an anthology series due to John Carpenter wanting to expand the possibilities of the dangers around this time of year. In this case, the story following an evil corporation known as the Silver Shamrock that set out to create masks that lead to horrifying deaths. With a new cast and creative ideas, the lead, Tom Atkins, supports the cast. Audiences and critics didn't approve, but now has a cult following. "1988, Halloween 4, Michael returns, but this time it's for more money." The fans wanted to see Michael back, and so they shall. But Michael isn't the only one returning, with Donald Pleasence reprising his role as Dr. Loomis, and new characters, Jamie and Rachel portrayed by Ellie Cornell and Daniel Harris. The film is a Halloween favorite of sequels for most fans of the franchise, rightly so. It has it all. Good writing, directing is consistent with the autumn overall feel. Our two main protagonists shine with the great chemistry on screen. "1989, Halloween 5. With only a year within the success of The Return of Michael Myers, comes his revenge. This film, being known as a disaster and a poorly written film with very little character development. Beloved characters such as Rachel die off too soon, but don't worry, we get their replacements. Which meaning will tell you some of the worst in the franchise, and I'd have to agree. Donald Pleasence and Daniel Harris, however, managed to try their best in the little direction they were given. Don Shanks, who portrayed Michael in this film, is my least favorite. While Nick Castle, Dick Warlock, and George P. Wilbur take in the spotlight, the tone and quirky ideas with the Man in the Black in this film make it almost impossible to watch. But you can always skip it as most tend to do. "1995 Halloween: The Curse of The Curse of Michael Myers." From director Joe Chappelle, desperately grabs what's left of the story. Given the events of Halloween 5, Michael is now part of a cult and kills off his niece Jamie, which now she's played by a different actress, so by all means, bye bitch! We now follow a familiar character known as Tommy Doyle, a man who used to be babysat by Laurie Strode. He then gives us unwanted insight on Michael's origin, played by Paul Rudd, which I usually love, but in this case, not so much. Returning as Michael Myers from Halloween 4, George P. Wilbur, gives a much more menacing performance. The autumn feel is showcased well in this film, which is one of the good things about it, as well as the mask. This installment being Donald Pleasant's last Halloween film, it's sad he went out with this failed attempt, but those who know him will always remember him as Dr. Loomis. In 1998, director Steve Miner takes the helm with both Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3 under his belt. He brings his experience to Halloween H2O, which just so happens to be a personal favorite of mine. Bringing back Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis to once again bring life to her first ever on-screen character, Laurie Strode. 20 years since the first murder she encountered, Michael is back to finish what he started, along with her son John. In my opinion, the cast is one of the best in the entire franchise, with both Josh Hartnett and Michelle Williams and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the late Janet Leigh making a special appearance. We see a fragile but also strong and matured version of Laurie Strode, struggling with PTSD, also affecting her son. The climax is so intense and satisfying, with this being what should have been the final confrontation between Michael and Laurie, keeping the story of 1, 2, and H2O a perfect beginning to end. With Laurie Strode finally facing her demons and taking matters into her own hands, evil finally meets its end, or so we thought. In 2002, Michael is now resurrected, but not really, because he never actually died. You know the story. From Halloween 2, Rick Rosenthal takes the helm once again. From one of the best sequels, then to one of the worst. It may not be as bad as Halloween 5 or some of the aspects of Halloween 6. A TV show known as Dangertainment sets up this crew to investigate Michael's house. But once again, it goes terribly wrong because Michael's shed isn't working upstairs. This cast is one of the worst in the franchise, which in some cases of the film had potential, maybe as a standalone film, exploring Michael's house, and not have it connected to H2O to ruin the events. There's a few positives to say about this film is that I do quite enjoy the theory of Laurie Strode ending up in a mental institution much like Michael Myers, and the operatic tones and the theme song. But with this final installment of the original franchise, they clearly milked the cow to death. Halloween 2018, directed by David Gordon Green and original Halloween director John Carpenter, bringing his talents to the score, as well as Cody Carpenter and Daniel Davies. Jamie Lee Curtis once again daring to come back to play Laurie Strode one last time, with somewhat of a new story of what's not ripped off of their original franchise in H2O. It has good elements, but was it worth all the trouble? This time disregarding the other sequels. With a blank slate, this is now a sequel to the original Halloween. Sometimes a story can be told in just one film. One of the many flaws that any genre of cinema suffer. is that if it's successful, it's dragged on to another sequel, and the characters tend to lose their arcs and interests. 9 times out of 10, people love the classics. Audiences want more, and so do the companies. But what we get is less and less of a film and more of a cash grab. There's many forms of art, and some that being cinema. Halloween 1978 is a prime example of that. But instead of letting it lie, they end up tainting the material and ruining what we love so much about those characters. Some fans may enjoy the entire franchise, and that's okay. But from my point of view, if you can't expound on the story and its characters, and there isn't any slack to work with, then sometimes a sequel isn't necessary. That's the beauty of film. Sometimes it can be so powerful and beautifully crafted that it already stands on its own. But that's not to say you can't enjoy all of them. And I still enjoy watching the entire franchise even though they have flaws. Because not every film is perfect. Well, sometimes they're pretty dang close.